Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be looking at the top transfers going into game week 10. Now I know a lot of FPL managers have activated their wildcard as well, so I'm going to be incorporating some top players that I think you need to own or at least consider for those game week 10 wildcarders. So this video is going to cater for all of you managers. So if you are new around here, please do consider smashing that subscribe button, and as always, please do drop a like on the video. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, I wanted to talk about the defenders that I think we need to keep an eye on right now in the game. I've decided to go for a bit of a different price bracket in the three that we are comparing. Tsimikas of Liverpool, Arsenal's Gabriel, and of course, Newcastle's Trippier, who has been one of the best FPL assets in the game so far, and a player that has definitely helped me over the last few weeks get at least a couple of green arrows. So the reason why I've considered all three of these here is because, first and foremost, I think they're all great transfers in for game week 10 if you want to, but also brilliant wildcard options. So first up, Tsimikas recently emerged as an FPL option off the back of the Robertson injury. 4.5 million. Now, it's worth noting, we literally have zero data to kind of understand whether Tsimikas is a good asset or not. He played his first game in game week 9, came off slightly early as we know, so we don't really know first and foremost whether he is going to get regular minutes and also whether he is even a good FPL option. But what I do like about Tsimikas, especially for those that are wildcarding, is a really cheap entry point into that Liverpool defence with Nottingham Forest at home, Luton away and Brentford at home. I feel like you might only want Tsimikas over that period, and then if he does eventually get benched and maybe the likes of Joe Gomez, he's served his purpose in your team, and then you could look to maybe either just bench him week in, week out, or downgrade him to a cheap 4 million defender. But right now, with the information that we have, I feel like it is impossible to ignore Tsimikas until maybe Jurgen Klopp comes out and says, no, Joe Gomez is our left back. So I think if you're wildcarding right now, Tsimikas is a player that I think you just take a punt on, start him, and hope that he does get some attacking returns in that Liverpool team. He is a gift right now in the game. It's worth noting, I'm not going to touch on the underlying numbers because, of course, we're only looking at about 60 minutes of information, so it's really skewed based on the per 90 minutes. However, the information that we do have enough of is Arsenal's Gabriel. Now, obviously, it's been a bit of a rollercoaster season for Gabriel, in and out of the team, but it looks like he has cemented his position back on that left-hand side of the defence. 0.02 XG per 90 is nothing to write home about. Isn't really offering much attacking threat right now, and also the expected assist is at a big fat 0. So we're not really looking at Gabriel as a goal-scoring defender necessarily, although historically he has got in amongst the goals in previous seasons, so he does have the potential. Now, looking at the bonus per 90, 0.32, it's okay. Nothing really to write home about, especially when you look to the side and see Trippier's numbers there. But what I like about Gabriel, he's getting you an investment into a very good Arsenal defence who have great long-term fixtures, starting with Sheffield United at home in game week 10, Burnley in game week 12, even Brentford away. I fancy Arsenal maybe to just be really resolute there and get the result. Newcastle game is an anomaly. We know Newcastle are fantastic at St James's Park. I think if you're looking for free transfers, I don't think Gabriel is an absolute desperate pick right now, it's worth noting. But if you're wildcarding right now, I definitely think Gabriel is just an easy entry point into that Arsenal defence. You start him in game weeks 10 and 12, and then he can come in and out of your team depending on the rotation of your other defenders. But the one that is really splitting opinion right now in the FPL community is going to be Kieran Trippier. 6.9 million, 0.01 XG, but the expected assists at 0.38 per 90. He is back to his best in terms of the underlying numbers of what we saw last season. And also his bonus points are an absolute joke, as we know, averaging 1.4 bonus points per 90. We know he's an animal. If they keep a clean sheet, he's in the bonus points. If he gets an assist, he's in the bonus points. He's a monster. The problem why we're not absolutely locking him into a wildcard pick is because of the price point being at 6.9 million and the fixtures coming up. Wolves away, Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home. It feels like a real mixed bag for Trippier and Newcastle. But the one thing I do want to highlight is Newcastle's ridiculous home form. I feel like any team that they do have at St James's Park, they have the opportunity not only to keep a clean sheet, but to get a positive result from attacking potential. And it's also worth noting, Newcastle have accumulated the biggest XG of any team so far this season. And Trippier, we know, is the heartbeat of that Newcastle team. So if you're looking in a position right now as free transfers to sell Trippier, I really would second guess what you're doing right now, because I think Trippier is a really hard sell. I think he's easier to sell if you are wildcarding right now, because you know that you are taking the funds out of Trippier to reinvest in a lot of different areas in your squad. If you're selling Trippier part of a free transfer strategy, I would question it right now, because the -4, the -8 that you're inevitably probably taking, is it worth it when you know Trippier away against Wolves, who are quite low scoring, could easily rack up another 9-pointer in that game week? But it's worth noting right now, a guy who is on wildcard, I haven't been able to put Trippier in a wildcard team that I'm happy with right now, and it sits very uncomfortable. So what I do like is, if you are currently owning Trippier, holding him is actually going to be an amazing strategy, because I know for a fact a lot of game week 10 wildcarders are going to be selling him, and his ownership is only going to continue getting further down. So that's the cover on defenders. Let's move on to the midfielders, of course. So looking at the midfielders, and what I've decided to do is look at some cheaper alternatives to the game, because look, I can sit here and tell you how good Mo Salah is, Saka, Son, but we know they are excellent picks for not only game week 10 and beyond. So I'm going to look at the options that I think are good enablers, because in order to afford all these premium options, especially if you're trying to hold Trippier in your team, we need to find the next best thing from a price point perspective. And I think I've got 3 of these right here in Cole Palmer of Chelsea, Newcastle's Gordon, and Brighton's Mitoma. So first up, the one that I really do like recently is Cole Palmer. It's worth noting, it looks like his price is going to rise to 5 million. So he is getting that kind of traction in the FPL community right now. But his numbers are really, really good. An XG of 0.64, but it is worth noting a lot of his XG has come from penalties over this season. He scored 2 so far for Chelsea. But what I always say is this, that's a fantastic thing. Yes, it does skew his numbers. His open play XG is a lot less, but a player at 5 million who is taking penalties for a top team is nothing that we can look past right now. That is brilliant. That's a good thing, not a bad thing for an FPL option. An expected assist of 0.33 per 90 is excellent numbers as well. And you can see that in his big chances, 0.81. They're really solid numbers for a player who is so cheap playing in a good team. The big thing about Cole Palmer right now is, of course, the fixtures are not very good. Brentford at home is good, but then Spurs away, Man City at home, Newcastle away. Don't come much trickier than that, especially looking at form teams right now. Now, Chelsea are actually looking at a much better attack in terms of transitions, but is Cole Palmer going to get the points over that period to justify owning him? I'd probably say no, but the reason why I do like Cole Palmer is because if you need a player to squeeze into your team as maybe a first bench option or even a 5th midfielder to start week in, week out, as long as it enables you to get all of the other premiums in the game, I don't mind Cole Palmer. But it is worth noting that with these fixtures coming up, my expectations for Cole Palmer are probably less and less once we take out the penalties that he is scoring for the team. But I think he is a very good chance creator nonetheless. Now, Gordon is very, very good in terms of underlying numbers, in terms of well-rounded. 0.33 XG per 90 is actually better than Cole Palmer's open play XG, and 0.29 expected assists. Really solid numbers for Gordon. Decent big chances per 90 at 0.59 and 14.9 projected points over the next 4 fixtures. But the fixtures are a little bit mixed. Wolves, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Chelsea. Very, very mixed bag right there. I do expect his game time to be pretty good, but we do need to remember he also has Champions League to contend with, a very, very competitive group that they're in. So could we see rotation from Eddie Howe in certain fixtures? Potentially. I like Gordon. I think his game time is going to be pretty good in the Premier League, and his numbers are backing why he is being very, very popular within the FPL community. But I don't think I would be tempted by him right now because of those fixtures. I'd probably rather just go down to Cole Palmer or upgrade to Mitoma, who is the other midfielder of choice. Now, hasn't necessarily been as popular with active managers over the last few months, but that's because Brighton have been very, very hard to predict in terms of their lineups, and the fixtures have been very difficult for Brighton. But they're about to change. Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield United at home, Nottingham Forest away. Unbelievable fixtures for Mitoma and Brighton. And with the injury to Solly March looking like it could be quite significant, I think that only improves Mitoma's minutes over this period if they weren't locked already. Now look at the XG, 0.32, 0.22 XA, big chances at 0.83, and he's also projected to score the most points over the next 4 game weeks of the 3 assets. I do think Mitoma is the choice to go for if you can afford it in your FPL teams. Now, yes, there are going to be question marks about Brighton's lineup each and every week, and of course they are playing in a competitive Europa League group, so I think a lot of De Zerbi's attention is going to be drawn towards those midweek fixtures. But I think Mitoma is the only guy who can really play on that left wing right now, with a Dinger maybe moving over to the right. And I think if you can squeeze Mitoma into your FPL drafts alongside a Son, a Saka and a Salah, then I think you've got the perfect midfield structure there. Otherwise, coming down to a Cole Palmer or a Gordon is an alternative, but if you can squeeze Mitoma, I think this is the route to go for, because looking at the players that you want to own from game week 10 and beyond, with the fixture swings, I think Brighton could be the next hot property that we all want to invest in, and you can get ahead of the game with your transfers or wildcard. So those are the midfielders covered. Last up, I want to look at some forwards who could be part of your second strategy. So last up, we are going to be looking at 3 strikers that are all vying for our attention right now. So it's worth noting, I haven't included Erling Haaland. I personally think Erling Haaland is still a fantastic FPL option, even though I know a lot of the community are moving away from him. So, of course, if you're going for a no Haaland strategy, you could own all 3 of these if you want to as part of your draft. So what I want to look at right now is who is actually the best second striker. We'll consider Haaland as essential for this purpose of the video. So first and foremost, look at the XG per 90. We have Darwin leading the way at 0.93. Ridiculous underlying numbers. He's also great for chance creation, 0.43 expected assists per 90. He is outscoring both Alvarez and Watkins in both departments by quite a considerable distance. And the big thing as well with Darwin Núñez, which is always ridiculous when I see it, is the big chances per 90 of 2.12. Ridiculous. When we compare that to Alvarez's 0.48, it should seem like a no contest right now. We go for Darwin Núñez. The problem, we never know about his minutes. The fixtures are even fantastic. Forest at home, Luton away, Brentford at home. Yes, then they got City away, but then decent fixtures after that. And when we compare that to Man City's, Man United, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Liverpool, I think there is obviously an argument to say Darwin Núñez versus Alvarez. I'd favour Darwin Núñez. And I think if I was in a position right now where I was wildcarding, I'd actually have Alvarez as number 3. Now, I get it. Alvarez has been in fantastic form right now. He plays for one of the best teams in the league, and I expect him to play considerable minutes over the next 4 or 5 game weeks. But when I'm wildcarding, if I'm looking at transfers in, I sometimes want to look for the one that I think is going to explode next. And looking at the underlying numbers, looking at the fixtures, Darwin Núñez has to be that man right now. I get it. There is a lot of risk. Jota, Gakpo, all vying for that number 9 position. And I would probably argue that if you want to play safer, Alvarez is the route to go for. But if there is a player who's going to go off over the next 3 game weeks and you want that player who's going to propel you up the ranks, I think Darwin Núñez is that man. You cannot ignore these underlying numbers. But the one that ticks all of the boxes right now is, of course, going to be Ollie Watkins. The fixtures coming up are unbelievable. Luton at home, Forest away, Fulham at home, even Spurs away. I think that is a good fixture for Aston Villa's attackers. And look at the numbers, 0.56 expected goals per 90, 0.24 expected assists per 90, and the big chances at 0.82. That's good big chances per 90. Let's just take Darwin Núñez out of the equation because he's such an anomaly in this position. What I also like, the projected points for Watkins is second best of all forwards at 20.01. So, look, how do I view the second striker right now? If you're wildcarding right now, I think it is unbelievably hard to ignore Watkins. I would love to sit here and say to you, go for Darwin Núñez over Watkins. But the numbers that he's putting up right now, the ownership in the game, and also the fixtures coming up, can you not own Watkins with Luton at home? I think the answer is no right now. So what I'd probably say to you is this. If you're going for the Haaland strategy, I think you just put Watkins alongside him and you go for that. If you're in a position where you're doing free transfers going into game week 10, maybe you have a spot that you could put Darwin Núñez in. I would love to urge you to consider Darwin Núñez for your teams. But again, you know the rotation risk that could happen with those assets. I would say monitor the Europa League game, because if Darwin Núñez is benched for that, I think that's really good news for a start this weekend. So if I had to rank them, Watkins 1, Darwin 2, Alvarez 3. But I really think Darwin has the potential to outscore Watkins over the next 3 game weeks. So, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments, are you currently on a Game Week 10 wildcard or not? I personally am, and I will be revealing mine on Friday's video. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.